Hello everybody and welcome to another edition of the Redstone Toolbox. My favourite block in the whole of Minecraft is the Observer. So through the course of this video, I'm going to be showing you what an Observer is, what an Observer does, and why I feel it's the best block in the whole game. So to make this video easier, I'm going to be doing it in sections. Now our first section is this red one here, which says Observers, the Basics. So this is just going to help us see what an observer is and what it does. So if you've never seen an observer here, this is what it looks like. We have what's called the observer face here, which looks like a angry looking man. And we have an output point here, and the arrow always points to the output point. So what does an observer do? Well, an observer is a block that emits a redstone signal, a one-tick pulse in this case, when a block is placed in front of it, so here, or a block is updated. Now that might sound very confusing, but it really isn't. So this is the output point, so this is where the redstone signal will come out. So let's put a piston there so we can see when it is activated. And if we were to place a lever here, as you can see, that observer detected that there was a lever there, so it sent a pulse through this piston. And if I change the state of this lever by turning it on, as you can see we have another pulse, off, on, and we can see changing the state or placing or removing the block all gives an output. And I'll be going through this section a little bit more in detail in the blue section here. But how long does an observer take to observe? Is it instant? Does it take a little while? Well, this section will hopefully clear this up as well. So on the right we can see we have an observer going into a piston, and on the left we have a repeater on 3 ticks going into this piston, because one observer on its own takes 3 redstone ticks to go through to give an output. As you can see when we flick the lever, see the left one activated first, but sometimes you see there the right one activated first, so it's completely random that this observer is on 3 ticks. That's how we can tell, because it's going back and forth. If it was on 1 tick, this one would always activate first, because 1 tick is faster than that. And of course on 4 ticks, this one will always activate first, as you can see. So 3 ticks is how long that takes to observe. But here is the weird bit. If we have multiple ones in a chain, like this, so all I've done here is placed one down and gone along like that, you would think, because there are 3, that this one would be 3 ticks, take that long to go through. This one would be 3 ticks, that's 3, 6, and this one would be 3 ticks, so it would be 3, 6, 9. But you'd be wrong. And this is the weird bit. The first one takes 3 ticks, but then everything after that, as long as they're touching each other, will only take 1. So here we have 3 observers, so the first one takes 3, then 1 and 1, which will make 5 redstone ticks total. So here we have 5 redstone ticks. We have 1, 2, then 3, so that's 5. And as you can see, they literally fire at the same time. So if we were to say we had, for example, 10 observers, we would have a 12-tick delay going through them, because the first one will be 3, and the other 9 will be 1. 9 plus 3 equals 12. Very strange. So on the 1, it's just 3. In multiples, it's the first one's 3, and then you plus 1 every time. So just a quick recap on this section. An observer observes a block being placed or broken or updated on its face and gives a 1-tick output. The redstone takes 3 ticks to go through the observer, as we saw in this little bit, but if it's in a chain, the first one takes 3 ticks and then the rest take 1. So now on to our blue section. So what can an observer observe? Now if you've watched any of my videos, you will know that an observer can detect a lever, redstone dust updating, a redstone repeater, comparator, anything like that. These will all give an output because these are blocks being updated. But how about things like a minecart? Well, no, that will not detect a minecart moving, but this observer would detect this detector rail being fired, as when we push this, as you can see, the only one which fired was that. So if we place a minecart back here, as you can see, that has no effect on this observer. How about a chest being opened or a trap chest? What do you think? Well, again, no, that does not activate an observer. How about a dropper or a dispenser being fired? Well, yes, that does activate an observer. But how about a block being placed from one dropper into another? Does that activate the observer? Well, no, it doesn't. As you can see, now the item is now on the left-hand side, but this has not activated. This one is only activating because this dropper is being fired, not because it has any blocks actually in the dropper. How about a piston moving like this? Again, yes, this fires, as you can see, on the extension and on the retraction. How about water changes? Well, yes, again, this does work. As you can see, and it goes up very fast because that's how the water's changing, very fast. And when we go back to normal water, as you see, it goes up again. How about an observer being moved? Well, yes, again, this does fire on the extension and on the retraction. How about redstone going through an observer's side like this? Well, no, because redstone doesn't actually go through an observer. An observer is like glass. It is a transparent block. So redstone does not go through sideways, and it doesn't even feel it, as you can see. But the sides aren't pointless, but we'll see that a little later. And of course we know, because you've seen probably loads of farms using this idea, yes, it can tell if vegetation grows. But nothing like entities or players, it can't detect that. It has to be a block, such as this sugarcane here. Now let's move on to this green section, possibly my favourite section in this whole video, because we're dealing with monostable circuits, the secret of the monostable circuit. Now you may be thinking, what the heck is a monostable circuit? Well, a monostable is basically a circuit which, when a redstone line goes into the circuit, a pulse is produced because of that. And there are three main variations of this circuit. Now you may be still be very confused with what it does, but if I just show you, it's easier. So this redstone lever, I forgot what a redstone lever is called. That's quite impressive. Will produce a constant output. But a monostable circuit will turn that lever into a pulse. And we can do this very easily with observers and pistons. So this one is called a rising edge monostable, because when I turn on the rising of the pulse, the rising of the signal, we will have a pulse through. But on the decreasing of the pulse, so the turning off, we will not have a pulse. As you can see, when I turn on, we have a pulse, but when I turn off, we don't have a pulse. Yay! This second one here is a falling edge monostable circuit, basically the opposite of this one. So on the rising edge, when I turn this lever on, we have no pulse. But on the falling edge, when I turn the lever off, we will get a pulse, as you can see. So rising edge, falling edge. And this one is the mixture of both. It is a dual edge monostable circuit. So both on the rising and the falling of the lever, we have a pulse. So the rising, we have a pulse, and the falling, we have a pulse. Now, of course, monostable circuits are not new. You could use drop and hopper circuits ages ago, but these are so much more versatile. You can put them in any orientation you pretty much like. I find them so much better than using a dropper and a hopper. But why would you need something like this? Well, take this bottom of this 3x3 piston door created by the Bowtie Man. Excellent YouTube channel. Oh dear, that's so that's shameless plug. This bottom circuit here, I only want to be activated when I'm opening the door. So when I close this door, when I flick this lever off, I don't want this activating. As you can see, it doesn't. No redstone goes through here. But when I turn this on, then I want this to activate. And that is courtesy of this monostable circuit here. Just when this is off, this obviously goes back, so it's not producing a pulse through here. But when it turns on, this piston moves this observer, which then that observer fires, which finishes our redstone door off. So if you want to compact redstone circuits, learn what a monostable circuit does. Learn how to use these, because they make your redstone so much better. Now moving on to our yellow section, We have it here lengthening the pulse from pulse to pulse. I don't know how I come up with these stupid things. Now, a observer, when it observes, it gives a 1-tick pulse, which is quite useful for quite a few things, but it can actually break some builds. Now, I'll show you why in a moment. So, to combat this, if we have a redstone repeater on 4-tick delay, you might not know this, but a repeater on 4-tick delay actually extends the pulse by a tiny amount, but it is enough for your build probably not to break. So you can see here, when we flick the lever, the pulse from this side is slightly longer. Now, granted, that's quite hard to see because this one activates first. So what I'll do is these two are both on 2 ticks, and this one is just on its own on 4 ticks, so they're both going to activate at the same time. But look how much longer the pulse is on the right-hand side. You see there? It activates and stays open just a little bit longer. And like I said before, this has major application when you're actually building with observers in Redstone. So now moving on to this orange section, which is basically a continuation of this yellow. And we see it's called pulse application. So we now know that a redstone repeater on 4 ticks elongates the pulse of an observer output, and particularly actually any output, by a tiny bit. So how does this affect our redstone builds? Well, both here are both very simple piston extenders. They're not fully retractable piston extenders, but they are just extenders. So when I flick this lever, this redstone dust will be activated, powering this block. So when this block pushes this one, when this piston pushes this piston up, it should extend. And at the same time, we have an observer going to the bottom, which will fire that piston up to there. So this should work, in theory. But when we flick the lever, as you can see, that's what it should happen, but sometimes this does not work. See there? This observer is so fast that this observer pushes up and pulls down before this piston has even realised it should be active. So most of the time, I say most of the time, actually about 60% of the time this doesn't work, especially on tablet I've actually found myself that if you're on PE, it happens more often on the negative side than if you're on the computer, but that might just be random. But you can see it's very inconsistent. So how we can get around that? Well, elongate the pulse, of course, with the redstone repeater on 4 ticks. And now every time, it will work perfectly, and it will never break. So if you have a build which you're thinking, well, it works really fast, it works really well, but it's breaking with the observers, it might be this problem. So all you have to do is have the repeater on 4-tick delay. Yes, it makes the build slower, but it makes it work every single time. A second example is a simple block swapper. So of course, yes, we have a simple block swapper at the top, and we have an observer going into a redstone torch, which will fire this one down, then it can change the block. And this should work in theory, but sometimes the observer will be so quick that the piston won't have time to push the block over. See there? The blue one stayed for 2 cycles. And this makes it, again, a little bit less consistent. So a way around it is placing the redstone repeater, again, on 4 ticks. So the observer going into the redstone repeater, then into the torch, and this time it will work every single time, because the pulse is longer. And again, yes, I know it makes it slower, but it makes it work 100% of the time. Our penultimate section here is this pink one here. It says, observing the observations of observers observing. That's a mouthful. Now, we saw earlier that observers can take the observations from each other, like this. But they can also take the observations from the side, like that, from the bottom and the top, like this. So these ones are coming from the side at the top, the other side from the bottom, and as you can see, they all extend at the same time. Of course, these ones extend after this one, because this piston's only got 1 observer to go through, these ones have 2. So this means we can do things like this, where if I press down this lever, the pulse is going to go through this one, then this one, then up, then from the side of this one to this one, then from the side of this one to this one, and like that, all along like that. Like that. just something to keep in mind. This, though, does not work. If you try and put the pulse through the side or the bottom or the top of the observer, it will not work. Because like we said before, an observer is a transparent block. So it has to take the redstone signal from the side, like that. You cannot force it to go through it like that because it's not observing anything from this side. And you may be thinking, why do I even need to know this? Well, it's really good for compacting redstone. If you need to contort the redstone in a particular way, this is great. Or even adding some delay, only a little bit. Again, this is a really good way of doing it because it doesn't take any space and you can place redstone literally next to it and it's not going to affect it. So just to keep in mind, it is quite a good feature, but again, it might not be very useful for you at the moment, but when you get to compacting your redstone, you'll find that you use this technique quite a lot. Our last section here is this multicolored section, which is called tips and tricks. So things that not necessarily you need to know, but they are good to know. Now you may have seen this already, not on this video, but obviously on other videos. If you put two observers back to back like this, they will create a clock because one observer will be moved over, so it will give a pulse. Then this observer goes, okay, that observer gave a pulse, so I'll pulse. Then this one will say, okay, you pulse, so I'll pulse. And it literally goes back and forth, as you can see here. Happens very quickly. So if you wanted to put say an arrow dispenser, a really easy clock is to use this. Another little thing that I use is redstone lamps with observers. Now, why do I use a redstone lamp? Well, firstly, when you turn it on, it's pretty much instant. But here is the bit why I use it. When you turn it off, there is a slight delay, as you can see. So the on is instant, but that delay has been so vital for so many of my redstone builds, especially, for example, that 3x3 piston door earlier, that uses this for the closing. Just something to keep in mind because the redstone lamp takes a little while to turn off. And the last thing I want to show you is this. When actually placing the observer down, never place it into a bit you don't want to activate, because when you place it down, it gives an output. Now, I have broken so many builds because I forgot that when you place an observer down, it activates. So if you didn't want this piston to activate, just remove the repeater for the time being, place the observer down, and then place the repeater back. God, making a hash of that, that's it. So just remember, as soon as you place the observer down, it will pulse. So hopefully throughout this video, you have learnt maybe something, maybe a lot, maybe nothing. And if you learnt nothing, I'm sorry for wasting your time. But we've looked at what an observer is, what it detects, how we can use it in various builds, how we can lengthen it, and various tips and tricks along the way. And hopefully now you can realise why I feel that this little block in my hand here is the best block in the whole game. And my final tip of the day is just to practice. Practice, practice, practice until you're excellent at using observers, because we all could do with some practice. So if you have, say, a block swapper, build it again, but use observers. See if you can make it faster, smaller, more compact, and just see what you can do. And if you don't enjoy practicing, that's okay. Watch other people's tutorials on various things and see how they use observers, see how they do it, and hopefully then some of their awesomeness can rub off on you. And talking about awesomeness, subscribe to the Bowtie Man. The shameless plugs. It's terrible. No, I'm not awesome. No. But sadly, this is the end of the video. Thank you so much for watching. If you did like this type of video and you want me to do more of this, please give us a like. And if you really loved it, make sure you subscribe with that wonderful subscribe button for more awesome content. Anyway, I will catch you guys in the next one, and I'll see you later. Bye!